Good afternoon, everybody. It is April 16th, 2025, a beautiful Wednesday here in South Central Illinois. It's Melinda Weather Chat here. It's going on 1:30 p.m. and it looks like we have some potential for some strong to severe thunderstorms back in the forecast as we speak. So I'm going to show you first of all my old handy dandy favorite website that I like to see for guidance, and this is the Storm Prediction Center, aka spc.noaa.gov. As you can see, we're on day 3 outlook, so this is going to be for Friday, and it's going to be for April 18th, 2025. So right now, we can see a pretty healthy portion extending into Texas and Oklahoma, portions of extreme southeastern Kansas, extreme northwestern Arkansas, pretty big portion of Missouri into Illinois, extending all the way up into the Great Lakes. We definitely have a slight risk of severe weather in place for that day. So, just to have a general idea, we have a pretty strong frontal system coming through the Midwest this week, and with it, of course, we see some mechanisms in place to help provide some lift for thunderstorms, and I'll go into a little bit more detail here shortly. But with that being said, our probabilistic category is at a 15% due to the fact that since we're on day 3, normally we don't get until about day 2 out that we have a better understanding and idea of where the better probabilistic categories will be for that. So that's just some nice guidance in place by the Storm Prediction Center thus far on our risk for severe weather. So now I'm going to jump on over to my favorite weather model page. I'm going to take a look at the European model since we're about 3 days out. It's generally good for medium and long range especially, but I like to use it for medium range, especially since we don't have the best guidance until generally about 2 days out before a severe weather event. So as you can see right now, this is current time. Well, this was actually as of about earlier today. So I'm going to back out of this and I'm going to go into, let's see here. Let me change my sector view. I'm going to get a look at the entire US, and I'm going to veer over to my 500 millibar category so I can get a look at, you guessed it, I always like to look at storm systems and see what's going on with them right now. So right as of today, we're going to veer and just slowly pan this cursor over into Thursday into Friday. So as you can see, I have a pretty potent deepening storm system making its way into the area as we speak. But we're going to begin to see a mid-latitude cyclone develop along a trough, and our trough ejection zone is going to eject right out over into the plain states, into portions of the Midwest. Thus why Storm Prediction Center is focusing on this direct area, especially for potential for severe thunderstorms on Friday and even in parts of tomorrow on Thursday. But because, again, if you've watched my other posts before, you'll know that I generally focus primarily on central Illinois because that's where I'm based out of. So again, I have love for all of you. I just tend to focus on central Illinois primarily. So I'm going to veer into Friday now. I'm going to get into about prime time, peak afternoon heating time. So between 1 and 3 p.m. That's right about the time that we're expecting, the quiet to end. So especially this now speaking going forward for central Illinois only. But as we see here, we have a nice negative tilted trough here. And when I describe negative tilt, if you were to imagine a clock, imaginary clock with all the hands facing, if you were to draw a line where the clock hand is facing, we have an 11 a.m. to like 5 p.m. line there. So imagine the hands on the clock being at that 11 and 5 stance. So that's kind of what I'm referring to whenever I'm talking about a negative tilt trough. And this just means it's a deepening area of low pressure. And generally speaking, this is a difference between air masses. So we're going to have some cooler, drier air aloft here. And then in this section here where we have the upside down V, this is a ridge. So in that ridge, anybody underneath there, while you can still see some wet weather, your weather for the most part is going to be more fair in nature, maybe some clouds, but mostly sunshine, lower chances of precipitation, in addition, warmer temperatures. So this is going to allow air to lift and rise ahead of this boundary here. and then we have that cool air, especially drier air aloft, and that kind of battle zone necessarily of that degree difference of temperatures and wind change with height, etc. That's going to cause this area here to have some bulk shear aloft, which is normal because we have directional and speed shear with the difference in air temperature and boundaries and just thickness overall of the atmosphere to the surface. So gonna fast forward a little bit. So right now I'm about 2 to 3 p.m. on Friday, and now we're gonna shoot to 6 p.m. So you can see right about between especially noon and 10 p.m. on Friday, we definitely see the best portion of that storm system pumping those upper level winds into the area. So we have top about maxed out winds at about just over 80 knots. So that upper level winds aloft is going to be enough to help kind of just push and guide those storms in this general southwest to northeast direction ahead of that frontal boundary. And that also tells me that we have some stronger winds with height up at about 18,000 feet. So, and just again, to give you a general idea, this is a nice example of a trough. We've had some really nice storm systems this spring to kind of show some really good examples of that 11 to 5 p.m. orientation that I was describing. So now that I've kind of got general overall picture of Friday in terms of upper level winds, I'm going to take a look at my 700 millibar winds. And we're going to see how they change a little bit with height there. So this is still looking at today, April 16th. So I'm going to fast forward it to our forecasted upper level winds at the 700 millibar height. And I'm going to go into about Friday about the same time. So you might notice a little bit of a difference here, okay? Compared to what we were just looking at our 500 millibar winds, that level with height, we noticed how winds are not as strong because higher up you go, closer to that jet stream, the jet stream winds are going to help guide and shape and focus that general direction of overall wind speed shear. But then we get into some pretty stronger winds in the middle levels of our atmosphere. We're still pushing at about 60 knots in some spots, so got some really strong winds even still at the 700 millibar layer. And now I'm going to go fast forward a little bit. We can still see how strong those winds are. So we can definitely see how that low pressure system, as it tightens up, those pressure gradient winds that surround that storm system and ahead of that frontal boundary, just I love to see how the metrics of that wind dynamic changes as it moves into the Midwest. And I'm going to look at my 850 millibar wind speeds as well, and you'll kind of begin to see a difference in how the winds are going more from a northwesterly and westerly flow to a more southwesterly direction here. So this is telling me that I have some really decent directional shear. So remember back at the 500 millibar layer, we had winds going more of this direction, but then we get closer to the 850 millibar layer, so now we're at the lower levels of the troposphere here. We're seeing a more southwesterly direction, so that's just going to pump in and help bring in some of that moisture that we need for some storms to develop. And I love looking at the dew point temperature at the 850 millibar layer. It just goes to show you how potent and rich some of this moisture that's being pumped in just above the surface is for the storm system. So we get into Friday, and then boom, prime time. Look at those rich dew points. So pretty decent amount. We have some, probably we're going to go about, I'm going to say close to 60, probably 60s to mid 60s in some spots in the more juicy areas in the darker blue shading there, degrees Fahrenheit. So the southwesterly flow, that low level jet is definitely going to be pumping in some moisture from the Gulf. And I'm going to go look at my temperatures at the surface, just to get a general idea of what we got going on here. And ahead, you can pretty much see where those temperatures are going to be at, where that frontal boundary is going to be located ahead of that cold front. So essentially, we have a warm front that's going to soon lift into the region by middle end of this week. So we're going to see that warm sector begin to increase and bring up to 80-degree temperatures in some portions of central Illinois, and then especially mid to upper 70s. And then we even get down into our southern states like in Dixie Alley, Texas, and so forth. Definitely get a load of those temperatures, almost 90 in some spots. So really, really warm, unseasonably very warm temperatures for this time of year, especially considering that we're just in mid-April, especially in portions of the Ohio Valley and Midwest area. Normally, we'd see about 60s, 70s this time of year. So really nice warm air advection, some nice lifting mechanisms in place too, because warm air is going to cause updrafts. But we need some other things such as a frontal system as well as a disturbance in the atmosphere to help provide that lifting mechanism to help bring those air parcels up to rising point where they can condense and turn into clouds. So I'm going to look at a couple other things really quick. I'm going to see what my instability profile is looking like. So this is our most unstable cape layer. And again, most unstable cape, this just gives me a general idea ahead of that frontal system where we're looking at the best bulk wind direction as well as our best potency of where our most unstable areas in the Midwest are going to be for those storms to develop. So this is looking at about roughly between 1,500 to about 2,000 joules per kilogram with some higher concentrations, especially in north central Illinois here, probably about the Bloomington, Normal area. But most unstable cave, this just tells me a couple different things. This gives me a general idea of how much instability we have aloft in the atmosphere at about the 500 millibar level from the surface upward. But like I'm saying, most unstable cave, this just gives us a general idea in the atmosphere, what we're looking at as far as how unstable is our atmosphere, how much lift or how much energy do we have in place, how much gasoline do we have to give the spark for those storms to develop. So it doesn't take much, honestly, especially this time of year, as long as we've got some really good dynamics ahead of a frontal system or from a disturbance, some type of shortwave disturbance even. We have that mechanism in place to help guide and lift storms. So we've covered our shear, we've covered our convective available potential energy for right about this between about 5 to 6 p.m. Friday evening. So this gives me a general idea. Hey, thunderstorms are definitely looking possible. We have that to consider. And now I am going to change my sector view to Illinois. So I'm back into my sector here. I'm going to click on Midwest and I'm going to look at Central Illinois, all right? So now I've got that taken care of. I'm going to look at my convective products. I'm going to take a look at I'm going to see if I can begin to pull anything up. I really don't want to use the GFS, but I love to show some of these examples that the GFS can provide. The GFS is better for long, medium range. Long range, it's good for guidance because it lets us see so far out. But I have a couple concerns with the GFS. The GFS doesn't give us exact mode or type of storms necessarily, or even convective products for that matter. But as you can see here, it gives us a pretty good rundown of what our surface-based convective available potential energy is at the surface. So by about 3 p.m. Friday afternoon, we do have our most potent appearing of about 1,500 to 2,000 joules per kilogram with some higher concentrations, especially as we get into the foothills of Missouri and to portions of southwestern Illinois there. So you go down and look at the plains area, though, they're definitely going to have some more of that potent energy in place. So a couple storms could pose some tornadic conditions, especially the farther southwest you go in that slight risk area. I'm not ruling out tornado threat in this area necessarily because we do have some pretty good wind dynamics. As I was mentioning, we have that nice wind directional shear and speed shear aloft. Not as strong as like our past events, like what we had on March 14th, but in general, everybody, I do think we have chance for what looks to be a. I'm pretty confident with the GFS thus far, at least giving me a general idea of storm mode. I am pretty confident that a line of storms is going to develop out in Missouri by early afternoon, and it's going to begin to enhance and really shape up going into the late hours and evening of Friday afternoon. So Friday afternoon and evening, I'd say between the hours of as early as 2 to midnight in this general area here in central Illinois. Later in the evening, we'll see some storms enhance over the area, and we will definitely have the potential for some strong winds, possibly up to 55, 60 miles per hour. Not to mention, our chances are there for a potential for a couple embedded tornadoes, possibly, just due to those wind dynamics that we have. But with that being said, everybody, I hope you all have a good understanding of what the weather's going to do, have a way to receive warnings, and most importantly, thank you for watching. This was Melinda Weather Chat.